The UFC has been an organization that's been around for 29 years, and in these last 29 years, there's been multiple world champions, and some world champions who people had high expectations and high hopes for. Some champions that fans expected to be long reigning and dominant champions or GOATs of their divisions. And some champs, they did kind of meet those expectations, and others completely flopped and completely went the opposite direction of what people expected or thought of them. And in this video, I want to talk about 7 former world champions that fans expected to be dominant and long reigning, but weren't. And I'm going to start with number 7, Anthony Showtime Pettis, former UFC lightweight champion, also was a WEC lightweight champion, but came over to the UFC after that impressive Showtime kick that he got over Benson Henderson. Although he didn't finish him, he won that fight, and then had a good UFC run leading into his title shot. He, I think, was 2-1 in the UFC before challenging for that belt. You know, he had a bad debut against Clay Guida, but he rebounded with wins over Stevens, and then, of course, a knockout win over Joe Lozon, and a knockout win over Cerrone. So I got that wrong. He was 3-1 before challenging Bendo for the title. He got his title shot at Benson Henderson, and of course, he repeats history. He beats Benson Henderson again to claim the lightweight championship. And when he became champion, it just seemed like Pettis just wasn't going to be stopped. Like around 2013, it just seemed like that guy was going to be like a world beater, a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he had all the talents and potential in the world to be just that. I mean, Anthony Pettis, in his prime, before losing the title, was an absolute nightmare. I mean, he was dangerous everywhere, dangerous on the feet with them flashy kicks, and then also dangerous off his back as well. And he had a good resume, 2 wins over Benson Henderson, a win over Joe Lozon, who at the time was a solid guy, a solid top contender in that division, a win over Donald Cerrone, and then, of course, he made his first defense in 2014 against Gilbert Melendez, and from there, it just seemed like he was going to be the greatest thing in that division, and he was kind of reaching stardom as well. He got put on the Wheaties box as well. It just seemed like this guy was going to be a dominant force, and no one was going to beat him, and then sure enough, in the first quarter of 2015, he gets destroyed in his second defense against Rafael dos Anjos. And from there, Anthony Pettis kind of fell off the face of the earth. One title defense against Gilbert Melendez, gets folded, dominated by Rafael dos Anjos. And from there, he just wasn't able to rebound. He was never the same. He lost 2 more fights after that to Eddie Alvarez and Edson Barboza, and of course he rebounded, beating Oliveira, but then went back to his losing ways when he lost to Max Holloway, and from there he's just had an inconsistent win-lose run for the rest of his UFC career. And Pettis completely failed the expectations of many fans around the world. He went from a guy who was seen as untouchable to a guy who pretty much now just loses to any and everybody, even post-UFC in the PFL. Now moving on to number 6, Brandon Moreno. Now Moreno, there's still a chance for him. There's still hope because he's got that quadrilogy with Davison coming up in January. He has a chance to get his undisputed title back. But when he beat Davison Figueiredo in the second fight, in such dominant fashion, a lot of people had high hopes that Brandon Moreno was going to be a dominant champion in the flyweight division. A lot of people, including myself, thought this guy was going to be champ for a long time and get multiple defenses from there. I picked him to beat Figueiredo in the third fight, and I thought if Figgy can't beat him, I can't see who else could beat him. I mean, I know there's Pantoja, but I thought, nah, Moreno's improved. He'll beat Pantoja. He'll beat all the flyweights. And I think everyone was kind of on board with my opinion. But then the trilogy with Davison happened that following year in January of 2022. and he lost his first defense to Davison Figueiredo. Although it was a close fight that a lot of people thought should have gone to Brandon Moreno. Still, nobody thought that he was going to lose his first defense to a guy that he already beat. But of course, he went on to become the interim champion the summer of this year when he defeated Kai Kara-France for a second time to claim the interim championship. So maybe, who knows, maybe he'll beat Davison in the fourth fight, get the belt back and hold it for a while. But yeah, I don't think anyone expected him to drop the belt on his first defense and have to start over to try and get it back again. We'll see if he can. We'll see if he can keep it. Maybe Moreno can rewrite history. All right, moving on to number 5, Piotr No Mercy Yan. Now, this one's a weird one because when Yan first won the title at UFC 251 against Jose Aldo, a lot of people actually were doubting Yan and saying that he wasn't legit and that he was all hype because he'd only beat old men in cans, which, you know, was kind of true, although the Aldo win did age well. Not many people expected much from Yan until he had his first defense against Aljo. He was a betting favorite, but a lot of the fans thought that he was going to lose. But here's the major twist. He was literally on track to proving everyone wrong in his first defense, put an absolute clinic on Aljamain Sterling until the illegal knee changed it all. He got disqualified. And then from there, everyone respected Yan. And the expectations were that Piotr Yan was going to come back, win the rematch, and that he was going to be champ again and no one would beat him. The Sterling rematch got delayed, and in the meantime, Yan went on to beat Sandhagen for the interim title. And when he beat Corey for the interim title, it just seemed like it was a done deal. Okay, he just beat Sandhagen, who was the next best thing in that division, on the come up, beat him. It just seemed like Aljo was a dead man and had no chance to win the rematch. And many people thought Yan would be a 2-time champion and be dominant on his second reign, pick up where he left off. But Aljamain Sterling played spoiler and all that. And since then, Yan went on to lose again to Sugar Sean O'Malley. Although I thought he won that fight and it was a blatant robbery. Regardless, he went from being, you know, one of the most skilled fighters in the UFC and almost a pound for pound great to now a guy who's just sort of another contender who's on a bit of a skid. However, you know, Piotr Yan, he's still young and he still has time to change everything, rewrite history. He still has mad potential, but he's just not really seen as like that unbeatable boogeyman that people saw him as over a year ago. All right, now moving on to number 4, Cody No Love Garbrandt. Now, saying that Cody Garbrandt failed the expectations of many fans is an absolute understatement. Cody Garbrandt was like young, undefeated, 10-0. He just outclassed Dominic Cruz for 25 minutes to win the title in a fight that nobody expected that performance from Cody Garbrandt. And from there, it just seemed like this Cody Garbrandt kid was going to be the next big thing, the next big star, and no one was going to touch Cody Garbrandt. A lot of people expected Cody to get through TJ Dillashaw as his first defense, but of course, TJ Dillashaw played spoiler to that, where he upset Cody Garbrandt via second round KO. They did that rematch. Cody Garbrandt lost again, and after those 2 TJ losses, Cody Garbrandt was unable to rebound, and he went on a losing streak, of course, with the 2 TJ losses first. Lost to Pedro Munoz, a guy he shouldn't be losing to. Of course, he did, you know, bounce back and beat Sun Sal, but now is on a 2-fight skid again. And Cody Garbrandt, since beating Dominic Cruz and becoming champ, is 1-5 in his last 6 fights. He turned out to be a one-hit wonder, only known as the guy who beat Dominic Cruz and nothing more. That's all his legacy revolves around, which is very sad. Not trying to knock on the guy, it's just the hard truth. And Cody Garbrandt really turned out to not be as good as many people thought he was, and he was unable to hold the title, nor was he able to rebound and prove that the TJ fights was just a bad night. He kind of showed that he only became the champion because he matched well with Dominic Cruz and just had a good night, but wasn't able to beat everyone else. So yeah, Garbrandt wasn't all that. I mean, he had some talents. He had the physical gifts and athleticism, but Cody Garbrandt just kind of lacks the fight IQ and he got figured out really quickly. So now moving on to number 3, Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold is another guy who many people thought would dominate the division when he became the champion. Luke Rockhold, after he destroyed Chris Weidman, who was undefeated, people thought this guy was going to hold that belt for a while. He had a good resume going into his title reign with wins, finishes over Lyoto Machida, Michael Bisping, and even before his UFC career, he beat Jacare, which is a pretty big win. So it just seemed like, who is going to stop this guy? And it turned out a guy from the UK stopped him, ended his title reign, beat Luke on his first defense. Michael Bisping pulled the upset in the rematch against Luke Rockhold. And from there on out, Luke Rockhold, he kind of fell off. His career just went downhill. You know, he had one win coming back and then went on to lose 3 more to Yoel Romero, Jan Blachowicz, and Paulo Costa, and then retired. But if you would have told me or anyone else that after Luke Rockhold defeated Chris Weidman, dethroned him from the middleweight belt, that he was going to drop his first defense to Bisping and then go 1-3 in his next 4 fights after that and then retire, I honestly wouldn't believe you if you told me his career was going to go downhill after that, because I thought that he was going to hold that belt for a little while. I didn't think anyone could really beat Luke Rockhold around that 2015-16 era, but it's a crazy sport. You never know what could happen in the future. Anything can happen, even things that we least expect. Now moving on to number 2, Robert the Reaper Whittaker, former interim middleweight champion and former undisputed middleweight champion. Robert Whittaker won the interim title off Yoel Romero back in July 2017, and then was supposed to defend his undisputed title once Bisping lost the belt to GSP, and then GSP vacated and Robert got promoted to undisputed. He was supposed to have his first defense against Luke Rockhold, but he got injured, pulled out of that one. And then he had that second fight with Yoel Romero in June 2018. And that should have been a defense, but Yoel missed weight. So Robert Whittaker really never got a chance to defend the belt. And during the time he was champion, Robert Whittaker was never really active. Robert Whittaker in his championship reign, I believe, only had 4 fights scheduled and only 2 of them happened. He was supposed to fight Luke and Kelvin Gastelum, didn't happen. The only ones that did happen was Romero and Israel Adesanya. And the Israel Adesanya one did not go well for Robert Whittaker, and he ended up dropping the title to Israel Adesanya. And he ended up being a champion that really never defended the title. And he kind of had a wasted 2 years as champion because he never really had a chance to defend that belt multiple times. And when he became the champion, a lot of people thought that this guy was going to be a dominant champ. Now, he did hold the belt for a while, but there wasn't activity, and it's not his fault. He had health issues as the champion, but just going through Yoel Romero twice successfully raised everyone's expectations and hopes in Robert Whittaker that he was going to kind of be an untouchable force, which outside of those Adesanya losses, he actually has turned out to be an unstoppable force, but just without the belt. He's been more active and winning as a non-champion because he's been fortunate enough after losing to Israel to be healthy and active. But everyone thought the run that Robert is going on right now, everyone thought it was going to be that way when he was the world champion. Now there is still a chance for Robert Whittaker to, get the belt back and maybe hold it for a couple of defenses, because now that Adesanya has lost to Pereira, that does kind of open up the division. And I think Robert Whittaker, if he gets past Costa, he has a very good chance stylistically at dethroning Alex Pereira. And then from there, I think he's better than most middleweights outside of Adesanya. And if he doesn't have to fight Israel on his first defense, I think he's good. And number 1, Rose Namajunas, Thug Rose. This one's a little complicated because Rose did have the belt for a while, but with all the talent and skill that this woman has, you'd be surprised to find out that she literally only has 2 defenses and maybe even 1 if you're not adding up 2 separate title reigns that she's had. She's had the belt for like 5 non-consecutive years. She was champion on and off from 2017 to 2022. And the first time she won the belt, Rose was doubted. People expected her to not be able to hold the title. She was supposed to lose the Joanna rematch. Won that. She was supposed to lose to Andrade, which she lost that one. But then with that performance she gave against Jessica the first time, that raised a lot of people's expectations in Rose, because the first loss to Jessica seemed like it was a fluke. So it was only fitting to think that Nama Yunus would get the belt back, which she went on to do just that. You know, she avenged the Jessica loss, earned a title shot at Zhang Weili, recaptured the belt, and when she became a 2-time strawweight champion, it just seemed like Rose was just going to be like the Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko of the strawweight division, which honestly, it should have been that way. Because in reality, when Rose was the champion, literally her only competition in her second reign was Jessica Andrade, realistically, and Zhang Weili, because the second fight was so close. Weili was one of the very few women that was kind of seen on her level, but she had already beaten her twice and already beaten Andrade. She had a killer resume, beating Joanna twice, beating Jessica, beating Weili twice. It just seemed like she was just kind of in a league of her own. It was getting to that point. And then her first defense outside of Zhang Weili was supposed to be someone that's beaten her in the past, Carla Esparza, a matchup that should have seemed like that should have been, you know, a free win, a free defense for Rose Namajunas. That should have been like a given that Namajunas was going to beat Carla and, you know, add her to her collection of many former strawweight champs that she's beaten. But Namajunas went in there, had stage fright, underperformed, and lost a fight that she honestly should have won. And this honestly has happened twice now. Both times she's been champion, there's been 2 fights that she lost that she should have won. The first Andrade fight, the Carla Esparza rematch. But the problem with her when she lost the title was not a skill thing. It wasn't really a physical thing. It was more so of a mental thing. With the Andrade fight, she just didn't want to be there. She lost her fire and desire. And Jessica, who wanted it more, succeeded and knocked her out in the second round. And then the second time she had the belt, she just couldn't get over those demons of getting finished by Carla the first time, gave her too much respect, was too inactive for 5 rounds, and ended up dropping her title to Carla by a split decision, something that nobody would have expected from Rose. She had the belt for 1 year each time she's had it, but honestly, Namajunas, she could have been a champion for like 6 consecutive years with like maybe 7 defenses. She honestly could have surpassed Joanna as the strawweight GOAT, and she could have surpassed her record of title defenses if not for those 2 mental lapses she's had when she was a world champion both times. It just really seemed like the second time she had the belt, she was here to stay. She was here for good. She was hungry again, but all it took was 1 more mental lapse when she was unfortunate enough to defend her belt against someone who finished her in the past, which led to her underperforming the way she did. But when Namajunas is on mentally, because she's got the skills, when the mental is on, then Namajunas can be very untouchable, and we'll see if she can get the belt back in the next year or so. I honestly don't doubt Rose could become champion again. Zhang Weili, who she's beaten twice, is the champ again. I wouldn't rule out her winning the belt for a 3rd time, but I do hope that if she does, she can actually hold it for more than 1 title defense. But we shall see. But yeah, that's it for my list of 7 former world champions who weren't champs as long as the fans expected them to be, who people expected to be dominant champs, and they just weren't able to do it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If I've missed anyone, be sure to drop them in the comment section. Like and subscribe. Share this video if you can. Also, be sure to join me on Patreon and also follow me on DJC Twitter. I just recently joined Twitter. Going to be posting there as well. Peace out.